you very much, folks. Second order is that John goes and finds his agenda. We generally start these meetings with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we occupy the unceded ancestral lands and homes of the Piscataway Confederacy, a nation that once stretched from Virginia through St. Mary's County all the way to Baltimore. The descendants of the Piscataway still live and thrive in Maryland and achieved tribal recognition from the state of Maryland in 2012. Announcement. After the meeting, we will leave the Zoom open for anyone who wants to hang out, discuss anything, want support, so on and so forth. This day in history. April 11th, 1881, Spelman College, an institution sponsored by John D. Rockefeller's family, opened for Negro women in Atlanta, Georgia. It became the Radcliffe and Sarah Lawrence of Negro education. April 11th, sorry, skipped ahead a little bit. 1948, Jackie Robinson signed his professional baseball contract and became the first Black player in the major leagues. April 11th, 1968, President Johnson signed the 1968 Housing Act, which outlawed discrimination in the sale, rental, or leasing of housing. The bill also made it a crime to interfere with civil rights workers and to cross state lines to incite a riot. Committee updates. All committees are actively looking for volunteers and participants, and some are looking for leadership. These include events, rapid response, IT, social media, communications, book club, coming to the table, and the kindness committee. Logo updates. One Pasadena is partnering with PlatinumTees.com, a local BIPOC-owned small business, to bring One Pasadena branded shirts and hoodies. I believe they will have masks shortly. Grab yours today. Randy, if you have the URL, do you want to drop that in chat for folks?
Sure.
Excellent. And we also had a update on yard signs, if I recall correctly.
Well, no update, but I guess there's a company that we could use that is, I think, in keeping with our social and racial justice mission. And I think they're called Signs for Justice. I don't have access to that right this second, but we would need to get money up front to decide, and know how many people want to order signs. We don't need the money up front, but we need to know how many people want to order signs so that we know what they'll cost and we know how many to order, because, you have to pay a setup fee and a shipping fee and all of that. So I wasn't quite sure how to start that.
Okay.
So
watch this. Watch
Jean.
this space.
Do you know the range of the cost yet? Even?
I think the smallest signs, if you order 10, it's like $10.95 a piece. But I don't think they're huge. They might be too small. And then there's a shipping fee, and then there's a setup fee. So I don't.
No,
Yeah.
Getting an idea if it might be something I could buy extras and talk my neighbors into using, Yeah,
maybe. I mean, that would be great if we could all do that. We want to do one big order so that,
yes,
we keep the costs low and we don't pay
absolutely
extra for all. Because I think then if we put in another order, we have to pay that setup fee again.
Yeah.
So, which is really the problem with using one of the online companies. I haven't found a local BIPOC company that does yard signs.
Mm-hmm.
It would be great if we could find somebody to work with around here. So if anybody knows of any, let me know, please. It would definitely be, it would be easier to go local, and then we could pick them up and, drop them off. And
Okay. Thank you, Randy. Book club.
Yeah.
The book club is
India. Yes. I'm sorry. I
No,
apologize.
I wasn't paying attention to chat, so my bad. Yes.
Order extra. Unfortunately,
Oh.
that's true. I've had like 2 or 3 signs already stolen,
Yeah.
different signs.
So far, I don't think we've had one stolen, but we did have a interesting adventure with one, which I won't get into here.
It was stolen, it was vandalized, it was recovered by a neighbor.
Wasn't it used as sort of like a toilet?
Like a
kind of thing?
toilet, it was.
Yeah,
Yes, so
yeah,
they
yeah.
trespassed, they stole it, they took it across the street, they peed on it. They threw it further down, the court where they had it. And then a different neighbor, found it. And then another neighbor yelled at the kid who found it to put it back in the yard. And a completely different neighbor took pictures. So we were able to find out who did it. Yeah, nice adventure. So yeah, John, you may not have wanted to get into it, but I did.
Okay, well, the story has been sufficiently covered and I didn't even have to say a word, so. All right. Thank you, dear. Thank you, Randy. Book club. The book club is currently reading Why Do All the Black Kids Sit Together at the Cafeteria? And they are having conversations online in the Facebook group. May will be a limited series podcast, Nice White Parents, and the discussions will also be online in the book club Facebook group.
Could I just ask,
If-
so for the book club, actual discussion of the book on the date, is that going to be via Facebook or is it good?
I think I'm led to understand from Mary that due to several people feeling slightly zoomed out, that they've moved to online discussions through the
Okay.
Facebook group at
Okay.
this time.
Okay,
So more of a web-based chat board
Okay.
as opposed to
Okay.
real-time discussions.
okay.
Can't blame them after a year of Zoom and Teams and Google
Yeah.
Meets and all sorts of other fun conferences. I think I'm going to change my avatar to, connecting. Coming to the table, we'll be holding its monthly discussion group on, I have the wrong date, I believe April 25th, 7 p.m. A Zoom link will be provided to those who are interested, and I do believe it's attached to the event invite in the One Pasadena group.
Mhm.
Communications Committee, submissions for the monthly newsletter should be in by April 15th. If you have or know of a local BIPOC-owned business, we're interested in featuring it in the newsletter. Email us at onepasadenamd@gmail.com with questions or submissions, or if you're interested in joining the newsletter team. I'll drop the newsletter link into chat for everyone who may not have already have seen it. My wife, Debbie, has been doing a wonderful job of keeping track of racial justice legislation working its way through the Maryland General Assembly. She has found this exercise interesting, to say the least, but I will provide her legislative update in the chat. The Kindness and Events Committees are starting to work on a Plaster Pasadena with Kindness poster initiative. Stay tuned for more details as they come up. Events Committee, there was a Women's Unity virtual march held with March on Maryland. One Pasadena, particularly Rukaya and her family participated. You can watch a video recording of the event on Facebook. And I am dropping that link into chat right now. The Anne Arundel County NAACP is holding a Juneteenth celebration, kicking off on June 18th in the evening, and then on the 19th through most of the day. One Pasadena should attend. And I will also drop that link in the chat. as soon as I can find the right window again. All right, those were the committee updates that were fit to print. So now we are to community questions. Are there any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, or really anything else that the community wants to bring to our attention that you guys think that we should be tackling?
Michael just put a question in the chat.
So Randy, how do you
Yes.
order a t-shirt, a One Pasadena t-shirt from Platinum Tees?
How do you do that?
Yeah, I believe that's Michael's question.
You go to the website, and it's a little convoluted, but I think they have an order now button. And when you go to the order now, he's got a couple of different, like, he doesn't do this. Most of the time what they do is they do like giant orders for people. But so for us, and I think there's one other group that he's actually doing individual orders. So you'll see the One Pasadena. There's a couple of, there's like women's t-shirts and regular t-shirts. Are you seeing that? Do you want me to do that with you? Wait, hang on a sec.
Yeah, you go ahead. I'll follow up on what you just said.
Okay. Go t-shirts made to order. Wait, hang on a sec. There's the 3 lines at the top. Go to the you see on the top right, there's like 3.
Right. Order now. Right. Got
Order
it.
now. You see it?
Yep. Got it. Thank you.
So, and that's all we have so far, but you know, nothing is quick in the world of printing, I'm finding. So we just have to be grateful for what we have.
Right. Thank you.
And I know he got my order, but he's waiting to get some more orders before. Has anybody else ordered anything by any chance?
I'm waiting for the masks. I was going to place an order once the masks come up
Okay.
because I want to order all at once. So like to save shipping, I guess.
All right. Is there anything else that I mean, he's got a ton of stuff. I think the hoodies are maybe, I don't know if anybody's going to want to order a hoodie now that we're getting into the warmer weather, but should we add? I mean, I don't know how long it'll take.
Where
but
did
should-
the buttons come from? The One Pasadena buttons.
Debbie?
Those were made by Amy Britt and Laura Day. Laura has a button maker, and she and Amy pretty much were punching them out and handing them out. So we can ask for more. I mean, Laura, Amy, and I can all, trade the button maker around to make them, since we're not doing a whole lot else right now.
And we also have window, they're not window clings, they're more like window stickers and bumper stickers. I'm not sure where the ad for that is. That's another person from our group has set up her own e-commerce store, and she's making them from her house. So Debbie or John, do you know where that link is to Maureen's store?
I would imagine it's on Facebook. I don't know if she has another thing.
I know she put it on One Pasadena, but like, is there any way, can we pin that to the top, or maybe like pin that to where the t-shirt Platinum Tees link is? Is that possible?
That would be a question for the IT committee, John.
We can probably do that.
I think we should. I think, people might be in a spending mood now. Let them buy stuff. And
Oh.
it's a,
Jean, you're not on Facebook, so if I can find a way to give you that information for ordering without you having to go to Facebook,
Yeah,
I will message it to you.
The buttons really interest me, but I don't want
Okay.
effort gone for buttons just for me.
Oh, I mean, I can ask Laura and Amy, no problem. And I can always borrow it and make them myself, because I mean, the legislative session ends tomorrow, and then I'm going to have a lot more time.
I just think they're really handy to have wherever you go, and it's a small just wherever you are, in the grocery store, now I might be somewhere, you never know. Anyway, I'd love to have, I donate whatever would be helpful.
Okay.
You know, and just in keeping with that, I think maybe I would donate money to get like larger size buttons
Mhm,
so that we can have
mhm.
the full logo, the One Pasadena addressing racism in our community. Like, I think that would be,
Yeah,
you know, a nice big, because like they're
Mhm.
very small. It says One Pasadena and it's great, but
but people
that
don't
would-
know what it means. Yeah,
no, if nobody knows what it means, it's,
Right.
you know,
yeah. I
so
would be interested in larger ones.
what would, Debbie, do you know like how expensive that would be to buy like a batch of blank larger buttons and use those?
So I know like the blank smaller ones are not expensive, which is why we were giving them away.
Sure.
But getting the button maker for that size, I don't know how much that would be.
Oh, you have to get a whole different button maker.
I'm assuming so.
Okay. Okay.
But
I wonder if Maureen might have that. She might have that equipment. Maybe we can ask her to add that. If we could pin just links to the window clings and the bumper stickers, and I can see if she can do, you know, if she wants to sell larger size buttons, that would be great. Do you all think that's a good idea?
I do.
I will take a point to reach out to our button makers and our resident artist to see what we can make happen. I also dropped into the chat the link to Design Stew, who manufactures our stickers and bumper stickers at this time, which is Maureen's art company, but so it's all the same person.
since you're reaching out to Laura, let her know I'm perfectly happy to make buttons here for a while until my hand goes numb.
Okay. She's the only person that I can make fun of for working that hard, so. All right, any other questions, comments, or suggestions from the community? All right, hearing none. Our next community meeting, if I am not mistaken, will be May 9th at 7 p.m. And at this point, I can imagine that we can stop recording and move to general community discussion.
Do you want to talk? I don't know. Did you talk much about the kindness events initiative that you wanted to do?
I'm working on reaching out more thoroughly to events committee to start getting this off the ground. And once we have that in motion, I will have more updates to the general group. So yeah, that's one thing that's on my big old to-do list. I'll note that the weather is warming up. It's starting to feel nicer. More and more people are getting vaccinated, so we may actually be able to hang out together in groups. So the more progress on both fronts, I imagine that our spring and our summer, and hopefully fall, will be full of One Pasadena activities that everyone can look forward to.
The other thing, we will be planning a sign waving at some point. I think I was going to take the lead on that, and I haven't quite figured out a date or gotten anything together, but I think this week I'm going to send something to the events committee and try to get a date for that. So hopefully everybody here will be able to make it to that.
When you say sign waving, what will the sign say?
Well, generally we all make our own. So if, you know, we can certainly give
yeah.
you, we can give you, you know, you can say One Pasadena addressing racism, or you can say Black Lives Matter, or you can say,
Right.
you know,
Anything related to our mission,
anything related to our mission. Yeah, absolutely.
Good. I'd like to do that.
Yeah, and so like I know Debbie often brings her actual lawn signs, you know, yard signs. So if you have a yard sign that you like, you know, you're welcome to bring that.
Do you know where?
Well, we started talking about that, and we've done sign wavings here in Pasadena, at 2 different places. One is along Ritchie Highway in front of, do you know where Sprouts is? You all know where Sprouts is?
Yeah.
So along that strip there, which is a really nice big area. And that's been good. And we also did one in a Lakeshore along that area in front of, is it Hardee's? It's and a gas station.
Mhm.
And that was good too, you know, so I guess it's wherever people feel more comfortable, or you think we might get the most exposure, I think is where we should do that.
Good.
And that hasn't been decided, but maybe that's something for the events committee to decide along with a date. And if everybody gets 1 Pasadena t-shirts, that would be fantastic.
Good point. Thank you, Randy.
Erica, did you want to talk at all about your idea?
Yeah, I'm actually preliminarily looking at May 16th. But I'm not firm on that date yet, for a prayer rally for the end to racism. So it would be just people of all different faiths, whatever, you know, if you pray to something or meditate to whatever you pray or meditate to, we would stand and you know, do whatever your faith system allows you to do, you know, whatever you do for your own faith. So it would be open to anyone who would want to come to that event. So we're hoping to get some different clergy leaders of different faiths to come, and it would basically just be standing and praying with signs that kind of indicate what we're doing.
I like that. I would like to participate.
Okay, so I'll make sure we keep you up to date on when we choose a date.
Awesome. Thank you, Erica.
For anyone who hasn't heard, the legislation that, you know, the police accountability legislation that Hogan had vetoed, the veto has been overturned. So that was good news, though I could not tell you exactly what any of that legislation says anymore. It has been amended and unamended so many times, I can't even read it at this point. But we do have some police accountability stuff now. There was another bill that Hogan had vetoed. Let me find it, the Juvenile Restoration Act, which that veto has also been overturned. That made it so that when a minor is,
Yes.
is that a yes?
Yes. I don't know the details, but I'm for that.
You've heard of that. When a minor is convicted as an adult, so the Supreme Court had already said, you know, made a determination about, you know, minors who are convicted as adults can't get life without parole or something like that. So it has to be life with parole. But under this, the Juvenile Restoration Act, minors convicted as adults after a 20-year period, so they have to serve for 20 years. So after that point, they can ask a judge to commute this, you know, their sentence, you know, like an early parole kind of thing, shorten their sentence, that kind of thing. And they get to ask that like 3 times every 3 years or something like that. And the judge gets to decide. And, you know, basically it kind of gives an opportunity for them to demonstrate that they've learned. India says, which is in line with Supreme Court mostly. So yeah, that veto got overturned. I mean, there's a lot of other legislation that I've been following, and some of those are in the link in the newsletter or that John put in the chat. I've got a whole lot that I've been like really excited about, but I'm just telling you the ones that have been in the news. Yeah, the vetoes were overturned.
Thank you for keeping up on that.
I've actually really enjoyed it. like I enjoy watching the sessions, so, which is weird. I was, sitting in front of my computer for over 6 hours yesterday, just watching
Wow.
the voting sessions and, the debates on the floor and stuff, and taking notes. So yeah,
Thank you.
I didn't get a chance to say hi, Rakaya. Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Oh, Kaya.
Hello.
We have one of our button makers now, so we can ask about larger buttons.
Can ask, but I don't know the answer. Laura orders all the button supplies. I just do the manual labor.
Okay,
And I can help with the manual labor. So I'm telling you, Amy, and I'll tell Laura too. I'm happy to help with the manual labor at this point.
Cool. It's kind of soothing. It's a little routine. Step, punch, step, punch.
Well, we thought of
Help with manual button labor. I don't know how many people you really need. Right now, I'm caught up in doing postcards to voters, but or to unregistered voters in Virginia. But very soon, I would, if you need help, I could do that.
and if like the larger buttons that would accommodate the entire logo with the tagline underneath, if that's too expensive to just be sort of, volunteering and handing out, maybe we can get, we were thinking maybe Maureen could do that because she's, she has an e-commerce store and she does that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the more I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure if the button maker that we have would accommodate a larger size.
Yeah, we
Um,
were wondering about that
I think,
too.
yeah, I think that it's hard for me to imagine physically how that would work. I think that it is just for the one size.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't know if Maureen has that either at this point, but maybe she might.
Rakaya and Amy, did you want to say anything in the meeting?
The event yesterday was really cool. It turned out really great. I do have a video of just like my little piece of it. Like just me introducing my daughter and then my daughter's song, which was really amazing. She did such a good job on that song and it was really powerful. So if you guys want me to, I can post it on the page tonight so that we can see that, because I do talk just to, really briefly about One Pasadena. So we did at least get a plug and got to, people got to recognize that we had representation there. So, but it was very successful. It ended up being a really beautiful day. So for me personally, it was good to just like be sitting outside and like being in the fresh air for once instead of recouping from inside the house like I've been for the last like month, almost 5 weeks now. So that was good. And I mean, the weeks leading up to it were hard because there were so many different changes, and my daughter's band was supposed to play, but then the the guitarist couldn't play because she had to work that day and she just absolutely couldn't get out of it. But all in all, like it really turned out wonderful, and there was a lot of good messages in it, and I was really pleased with how things went. So I can post the video.
Awesome.
Please do post it. That sounds great.
is that something that we would also want to send out in an email blast?
So we could at least like
You're right.
maybe add it or add a link to it in the newsletter.
True. You're on
Jean-
mute at the
Jean, you're
moment,
muted.
Jean.
That's worked really well for me, the links in the newsletter. I just find it so accessible and user-friendly. That newsletter is great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I will definitely pass that along to the newsletter folks.
I'm one of the folks.
Yeah,
Well,
some of
then
us are
it's
here.
easy to
Thank you, newsletter folks.
Thank you for reading it. It's nice to know it went to somebody who
No,
appreciated it.
really. It's hooked me in. I mean, And I've sent it to neighbors with the idea, I don't know if this is something you might want to do. I find this interesting. I've used that as an avenue to ask a neighbor if she might know of a Black-owned business and pass it. So it's a great tool for quickly letting people know what the organization is doing. So it's not overwhelming, it's not intimidating, but it's inviting. So thank you for whoever all is the committee. I think a lot of people are,
Yeah, well,
I think a few people are a lot of committees, and I'm paying attention to that. I'm getting involved slowly, but I thank you.
yeah, you're not wrong.
Well, speaking of Black-owned businesses, I reached out to that Cakes and Confection, which is in Severna Park. It's a bakery. I know. I love them too, Michael. Unfortunately, and I sent them, just I explained who we are and what we're doing, and just said we wanted to give a shout out because our members are really interested in patronizing, BIPOC owned businesses, and I never heard back from them.
Yeah,
So
he's, I stop in 2 or 3 times a week, and he seems to eschew any political or any of this type of interaction. I suspect he's very, very busy there. He's very successful. And it's 5.5 days a week. They're there at 4 a.m. and so forth. And I think he concentrates on his business. That's my personal thoughts on it. But I'll see if I can engage him when I come back next week.
yeah, I was going to stop in too. I said it doesn't have to be anything having to do with like any racism issues, or it could just be like a little ad and, just a little, hey, here's a local Black-owned business. And I made that clear that we weren't trying to stir up controversy, but that may be a concern. And I get that. I totally get that. And he may not need the plug in our little newsletter. He may not want or need more business. We don't know. So the reason I'm bringing that up is we need to try to think of, are there other Black-owned businesses?
So did Dr. Karen Michael get back to anybody?
Oh, I love her.
Okay, so
Amy, did you see anything in the email?
Pardon?
I was asking Amy if she saw anything in the emails, and she reads the One Pasadena emails a lot more often than I do.
I try. I have not.
No, so I don't think she's gotten back to us.
Have there been any discussion of us like doing like a feature for every newsletter, like featuring a Black-owned business?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Okay.
Who is this doctor you're talking about, Jean?
So Karen Michael is right in Pasadena, Ritchie Highway, just near Jumpers Hole. She's an oral surgeon.
Oral surgeon.
I
She's
went
excellent.
to her and it was such a phenomenal experience. And I'm going back to this continued process in June. So I called and talked to her receptionist and who said that originally that Dr. Michael's very interested. She may be overwhelmed too. But if there's any more I could do, I could be an arm of the Black business, BIPOC business. I could be an arm of that committee and reach out to her more, or even offer to write something or make it easier. But we could just sit tight for a little bit. It's been a few weeks, I think.
It just occurred to me, we could have as many ads. It doesn't have to be one. Maybe this is really for the communications group, but is it the communications group? Whatever. But why can't we just have little ads in our newsletter, every newsletter, as many businesses as we know about? Why can't we just?
Free.
For free.
Yeah.
And we want them to be
Absolutely for free.
features. We want, them to talk about things. So it wouldn't exactly be like ads. We could certainly do more than one.
Yeah, I was gonna say we could feature a business if they want to be, and they can talk about when they got started and why did they come to the area, or we could just stick ads at,
I don't know if there's
obviously-
any legal concerns about that. I don't know if there's any rules about advertising.
Yeah, they would have to, right, they would have to, well, I don't know, if we say, if we're, yeah, probably is. I wouldn't even want to go there without having their permission, but it doesn't have to just be one.
I think the features are cool because that gives people a chance to learn about the business itself and learn about, you know, how they came to be. And I feel like that really, it tends to get people in more because they're like, oh, this is super interesting. I didn't even know this existed. Or maybe they didn't know that it existed, but they didn't know the backstory
Right.
behind it. So it kind of drives business their way just from people reading that feature.
And I feel like we're borrowing trouble a little bit. We're not currently having a problem with multiple businesses that want to be featured the same month. We're having trouble finding one that
Yeah.
wants to be featured. So
That's a good point.
maybe that we can deal with that if it becomes an issue.
I would be glad to brainstorm with anybody just about kind of a 6-point outline of what we would want from this business. Because if maybe like if I could have said that to the person I originally contacted, it would have speeded up the process. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, I know I love the idea.
We did have a list of questions that
Oh,
we could
okay.
share, I think. Right, Randy?
We do. Yeah, we have a list of questions. I
Okay.
was, you know, and what I said to the bakery guy whose name I don't remember.
Michael,
What I said was, what's that? What's his name?
his name is Michael.
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 Okay. Well, what I said to him was, you know, we will do whatever you would like, whatever you're comfortable with. Well, as much or as little as you're comfortable with, we just want to feature your business in a newsletter, and that didn't get any response. So, and I
How
think
many
in
are
the-
on, how many are on our mailing list? When you send out announcements, how many?
When we send out the newsletters.
Yeah.
Mary would know, but she cannot join the meeting today. Amy, do you
Roughly.
happen to remember?
No, I should know, and I don't. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Is
I
it
don't-
10,
I'm
50,
No,
100?
it's definitely more than
60?
10, but under
It's closer
100.
to 50
I-
than 1 or
Okay.
100.
I was gonna say, I was thinking 60. For some reason, that number came to mind.
That's a good number. Okay, thank you.
But
And
I
are-
could be
are
making
these-
it up, you know.
Are these just like people that are from the group? Like, did we put anywhere that that we were like requesting emails or asking if people want to be put on the list? We did something like that in the group, on the
We've done
group
it
page, right?
A couple times, yeah. And when the last newsletter went out, I posted that with the link to the sign up again for people to sign up.
Okay. I know that I've kind of missed some things too, so I apologize if I'm asking questions that have already been answered.
No. I'm struggling to remember a bit myself. It's been a weird evening over here.
We will accept as much help as anyone is willing to provide to any of the groups. I'm saying that because Jean, you were asking, you know, what you could do. But yeah, to everyone, we will accept whatever you can do, because there are, you know, a few core people who are in a lot of the groups and making things happen, and it does tend to be kind of exhausting. And a lot isn't happening that we would like to happen because we just don't have the resources to be able to do it all. So.
I'm going to explore this business part a little bit more, just to see if I can get any leads from other neighbors, just a few more irons in the fire. I'll just, and who do I let know?
Just email the Gmail address
That's great.
and
That works great.
we will see it. Amy will see it. I will eventually go and look and see.
I'll let you know if I make any progress.
Thank you.
If I get anything like
Appreciate
that,
it.
I forward
That's
it to
awesome,
everybody
Jean.
usually. Yeah.
So India asked in the chat, did people see an article questioning the terminology BIPOC? I did. I totally get that. And I don't know really what to do about it. Because I mean, I don't think there's any, you know, consensus, but it was, you know, interesting to read and to get that perspective.
What were some of the key points of that article, Debbie? Do you mind?
Mostly I'm really bad at that kind of thing because I can't word things my own way. I need to go back and read what they say.
Was it just kind of
I-
like questioning whether or not Black people like being called BIPOC, or what was the?
So some of it is confusion about BIPOC, like is it Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and other people of color, you know, that kind of thing. And why not just say Black if you mean Black? Yeah, India's saying it excludes Latinx and Asians as others. Yeah. So,
Hmm.
yeah. I mean, I'm old enough, I remember way back in the, I guess it was late 80s, early 90s, when we started using the term African American. And it was a question of, do we say African American or do we say Black? And, you know, that was very much, you know, split along. So it's, you know, I mean, I know someone who doesn't like the term Black or African American and prefers, you know, other terms like minoritized, you know, don't use minorities, minoritized. I know, you know, someone who prefers of African descent. Yeah, so I mean, there are many different ideas, you know, different preferences. You know,
Yeah, I
there's
think
no
that's a really,
consensus.
that's funny because my mother-in-law is in town right now, and she was a professor at K-State. She's retired now, but you know, whenever she's here, for sure, we have lots of interesting conversations, you know, between myself and her and my husband. And that was actually something that we just talked about, was the term BIPOC, or not so much BIPOC, but like person of color. And like for me personally, I think that the biggest issue that I have is that it sounds too much like colored person, which I don't like that term whatsoever. And there's so many, and I do understand why some people don't want to be called African American, because you may not be, I mean, like somewhere down the line you're of African descent, but that doesn't make you necessarily, like for instance, like my 17-year-old daughter, her dad was from Sierra Leone, but she's also half everything I am, and she was born here. So to me, she is the true embodiment of an African American. But I don't know necessarily if the rest of us fit within that category. So it's a really good question, because I personally, because of my specific heritage, prefer to be called Afro Latina, or an African Latin, or I mean a Black Latino, you know, like something like that, because that's literally what I am. So I don't know. It's like pronouns and things that, you know, people are just kind of trying to figure out where they fit in and what sounds the most appropriate. But it's not that I think BIPOC is a bad term. It just still, again, like I said, it just touches that little sensitive, you know, subject of like, it reminds me of just being called a colored person, which I don't like, because I feel like I'm just a human being, or I'm an American. Like, why can't I just be called that? Or I don't know, like, instead of having to fit into, like, for me, like an Asian American is somebody of Asian descent that lives and is, or maybe was born here in America. So that makes sense for them to be, you know, for them to be coined that, if that's what they prefer. But for me, I mean, I'm of Puerto Rican and Black and Creole descent. So, you know, I don't know. It's definitely something worth exploring and asking people what they really feel about that. Because I don't know if we were the ones who made that term. Are we? Who made that term and decided that that's what we should all be kind of lumped into? You know what I mean? I feel like it's something that happened from social media, and, you know, and having to abbreviate everything and just write everything, you know, in a way that's like quickly, you can just say what you need to say without having to write every single word out, if that makes sense. But I don't know if that's what all of us would prefer to be called.
I think India has something in the chat too.
Does anyone want to read that, or you want me to read that for the purposes of the recording? Out loud, I mean.
I'll read it.
Okay.
This was a good this is from India. This was a good paragraph to go back in history to, but there's another danger in BIPOC. If Audre Lorde famously said that there is no hierarchy of oppression, the term BIPOC sets up just such a hierarchy. While we appreciate highlighting the unique experiences of Black and Indigenous folks, what about the histories and realities of Latino Americans and Asian Americans? Their experiences are also foundational to particular parts of the country, namely the Southwest and the West Coast. These racial groups played a vital role as the dominant other in the white imagination as well, such as when the US government crafted its first anti-immigration law, the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1882, or in the violent takeover of Mexican territories of what we know as the American West under the guise of Manifest Destiny, and the malevolent stereotypes of both groups in demonizing opium and marijuana in early 20th century versions of the war on drugs.
I kind of agree with that. I'm not comfortable with BIPOC now that I read the introduction and the link there to what it means.
See, and like for me, I think it has to do with terms that people can use that make it more comfortable for them. If that makes sense. It's like, if you're a white person, what do you call somebody like myself or other people of descent other than Caucasian or European? You know what I mean? So it's like a term that gets coined to make it more comfortable to say, oh, you're BIPOC, awesome, but and in a way, like, is that person even really comfortable with that?
Yeah, I think the burden, unfortunately, the burden is on you guys to tell us what you want. Like, we don't know. I'm reminded of LGBTQ because I know that there's a lot of infight, a lot of, consternation in the community, LGBTQ plus, LBG. I mean, I think that that term has been a source of stress for people within the community, and maybe BIPOC is the same way. So I think the burden is on you guys to tell us. If you don't want us to use that term anymore, we won't. I won't.
I think and that's a good point too, Randy. But I think even LGBTQ comes from a place of sensitivity, whereas BIPOC, like I said, it's literally coining person of color, which comes from colored person. You know what I mean? And that was a term that was used, back in the 50s and 60s. I mean, they used that term a lot to not have to say the N-word. It's just, for me, I know that's hard, and maybe I need to really think about it. I mean, honestly, as a person that would be considered a person of color, I feel like that is a hard one to call, because you can't just walk up to somebody and automatically like assume they are one thing or another. Like I said myself, because of the way I look, it's easier for people to say, oh, if they were to describe me, like, oh, I think that she's like of mixed heritage, or she's like of mixed cultural background, which that's fine too. But other people, I don't feel comfortable walking up to another person, a darker complected person than me, or a person the same complexion as me, and just saying, oh, cool, another BIPOC. Like, that's I don't know. It really isn't a good term to me. It is definitely better than some of the alternatives. So for now, it's like, that's just kind of what's working and what's the most polite thing. And it's definitely better than minority. I can't stand the term minority. I am not the minority. If anything, we are most likely the majority here. Mixed heritage, multicultural people, we are the we are the majority. So I hate that term. So it's definitely better than that, but I still don't think it's what's completely appropriate.
So what do you think would be like, what would be inclusive for all people? Because I feel like I learned that, Rakai, I feel like I learned that term from you. I had never even heard it before. And I feel like you're the one who told me what it meant. Or that
I might have told you what it meant, but yeah, I definitely, it's not something that I just, that I love.
You're not comfortable.
But it is the term that is easiest like I said, on social media to type out because it's just that abbreviation. But if there's a better term and we could discover what that is, I would most certainly like to do that instead of BIPOC. But I think that's, again, that's something that, we should think about, or maybe even take to the community and ask the community, like what would be a better term, like maybe posting that article and inviting people to read the article and kind of the history behind that term and where it comes from and why people are using it now. And then asking, like, are people really comfortable with this? Is this what we want to use? Because like I said, I would love to explore that, because I think there's got to be something better. For the only thing that comes to the top of my mind is just, I would rather be called what I am. But I get that people can't just walk up to me and like figure out what I am, so I don't know. Non-WASP, that's a
I tend to, when I'm talking about racism, I often, use just Black and brown people. I mean, would that be appropriate?
I think so. I use that term a lot as well. I usually will say Black and brown. And brown to me is inclusive of, Asian Americans, Latino Americans, Latinas, and Native Americans, like anybody who's got brown skin. I feel like that tends to encompass that. But again, I am not Native American and I am not Asian American, so I can't speak for them and say that makes them feel, like that's the most appropriate term to be called when somebody's describing it. So, I do think that would be very interesting to post that on the page and see what kind of feedback we get, maybe.
I think the only thing that, I mean, obviously I'm outside looking in, but I really like the fact that that BIPOC includes Indigenous persons, because they have been so left out of the conversation for such a long time in this country, as have so many other people, so many Black and brown people. But I like Indigenous people, and I wonder, I mean, I like the fact that it's included in there, and I wonder if there is a term that can, sort of encompass everybody who falls in that category. And that's a tough,
Yeah. And
that's a tough ask.
That's a really respectful term too, because they are the Indigenous people, and I love that term too. I agree.
Yeah. And I don't know, do Asian Americans feel like they would fall into the category of brown people? I don't know. I mean,
Again, that's what I was saying. I'm not Asian.
Yeah.
I can't, but and then too, like, but I have my best friend is Korean and white, like she's mixed Korean and white, and that's what and it's like she feels the same way I do. It's like, I want to be called what I am. I don't want to just be like a brown person or a Black person or a BIPOC, or a person of color. And she said the same thing. She's like, it's hard. You don't expect people to just walk up and say, "Hey, Korean chick," or "Hey," like you don't want that necessarily. But I know that, like if I were to go up to somebody who I could clearly see was of some kind of Asian descent, and I were to assume that they were one race or another, and they weren't, they would get super mad. Like I've had that happen where I've asked somebody like, "Oh, are you Chinese or are you Japanese?" And they're just like, "No, I'm this." So, I understand why the term is being used, because people are trying to be polite and just be all inclusive. But I just wish that there was something better. Yes, India. I agree with that as well. I mean, all immigrants, there's a lot of immigrants from different countries from all over. And I feel like, obviously we're living in a time where they're purposely made to not feel welcome. Just being an immigrant in itself is just like, you don't belong here. There should be a wall, like all these crazy things. So I just wish there was a more inviting, respectful term. Like Indigenous people is a respectful term. So I wish there was something like that. So I guess we'll have to keep our thinking caps
I
on.
think part of it is with Indigenous. Yeah, with Indigenous, it's a more, I mean, it's still hugely heterogeneous in many, many ways, but it's a more homogeneous grouping, like I don't know very much about it at all, but it seems most people we would think of as Indigenous have identity altogether, a whole identity in addition to their individual tribes, clans, nations. Whereas the rest we're talking about is so heterogeneous, so much heterogeneity. And yet we're trying to figure out how to take action on behalf supporting all, but all is so many unique differences. It's sticky.
Yeah. I'm a part of a group. It's called it's like the Black Coalition for something or other. I might pose this question in that group and see what kind of feedback. 'Cause there's a lot of members, like thousands. So I think because I don't honestly see a lot of Black people use the term BIPOC. You know what I mean? Like I don't see that very often. I mostly see non-Black people use that term. So I think I'll pose that question and see what we get back.
That's a good idea.
India has another good chat. The other part of this, we can easily go up to an individual and ask what they want to be called. But if we write articles or letters to the editor, etc., what do we say when referencing Black and brown people?
Can we just say not white? I mean, that's what we mean.
But then that's centering whiteness as the norm, I think.
Do you guys like being called white?
I don't.
I'm
think-
fine with white. I don't love Caucasian because Caucasian is such a tricky, it has such a weird history. But I don't mind white.
But for me, it would be European American, but I'm fine being called white, but I guess there must be people who be excluded who are white, who wouldn't be European American.
I have a faint annoyance where I'm filling out forms and I have to check Caucasian because Caucasian is such a historically flawed term. I'm not really always okay with being white either because, my European ancestry was the ones usually on the receiving end, not the giving end. So, getting associated with some of those people and dropped in the same bucket is occasionally irritating, but I guess I'll live with white.
It just to me, sometimes it sounds a little punishing in a way. It's almost like you guys get to be called that because you were so mean to, and like John said, like, it's kind of lumping everybody into one category and you're not, I don't feel like anybody's being called what they should be, I guess is what I'm saying. I feel like, we're trying to use these terms and figure out, what's the best thing to say to people. And a lot of it though is rooted in some pretty nasty thing. You know what I mean? Like how many times has somebody that was angry with you just flat out called you a white girl or a white boy? You know what I mean? Like, or something worse. But I mean, even that in itself can sound like punishing and harsh. So, I don't, it's definitely something I think about often. I'm glad that we brought this up here because I didn't know if anybody else was thinking about that. Yeah. See, American, we're all Americans. I was born here. I have a certain ethnicity. I have a certain cultural background for sure, but I'm an American. And I feel like that is the part that people aren't willing to just accept, like we're Americans. And, you can say like, oh, this American gal that is of whatever cultural background, like that needs to be normalized instead of just having to say like this BIPOC or this, or this white person. It just all sounds like the focus is too much on that and not on the fact that we're all Americans. And overall, we're all humans. I just happen to have a little bit different skin tone than that human or this human. and I mean, I have mixed children, and that's hard, you know, for us, because I'm so, you know, what other people in my ethnic group would call light skinned. I'm so light. I'm so, you know, my camera's not on. I'm sure everybody knows what I look like. I just don't look amazing right now. And
You
so
always look amazing.
I thank you. So my kids, you know, I've got, you know, my 17-year-old is very beautifully cocoa skinned. And then my other children are even fairer than I am. But they've got, you know, curly hair. And so they have to deal with that often in school and with other people, where they're just like, you know, what are you? I hate when people ask them that, and they dislike it too. They're just always like, why do people say that? What am I? I'm a human being, or I'm a girl, or I'm a person, you know. Why is there that fixation on that? That's always something that's bothered me, is the fixation on a person's skin color, and not like who we are on the inside, or what our interests are, or what our commonalities are. It's always just like they need to know like what we are, what ethnicity we are.
So, I mean, some of it is natural curiosity, especially with kids. And so I don't know that I think, you know, I could see it going both ways. Like, you don't want it to be something that isn't talked about, because you don't want it to feel like it's I mean, it's of interest. It's a, you know, it's a, I'm Jewish, or you're Hispanic, or, you know what I mean? It's a discussion point, but I guess there's maybe obviously a way that makes that it should be asked that isn't going to cause sensitivity, and tell us how to do that, or tell us how to teach our children to do that. You know what I mean? Like,
I know when I was a kid, I grew up in Prince George's County, and a couple of the schools I went to were magnet schools, which were more racially and culturally diverse than, you know, most of the schools, I think, in Prince George's County, which tended to be more segregated. And generally what I would do was, especially in middle school, this came up a lot in middle school, we talked about race and racism all the time. But I would ask based on, you know, what my friends were doing. Like if I had a friend who was of Chinese descent, her parents were immigrants, and she talked about going to Chinese school and, you know, learning to write in Chinese and all of that. And so I'd ask her about that, because I wanted to learn more about her culture, her parents, you know, what she was doing at home. I had another friend whose parents were from India, and it was the same kind of thing. You know, we talk about that. And I ended up living with her family for a couple of months, which was very enlightening, you know, to learn about, you know, religious beliefs, because they were, you know, some of the family was Buddhist and some of it was Hindu. And to be able to, you know, eat Indian food. That was my introduction to Indian food. But, you know, for me, it was largely about learning about different cultures and how different families, you know, were living, and how much that was based on the cultures of where, you know, their parents or their grandparents or whatever were from. So that was largely what I was asking, but that's not exactly the same thing, I recognize. But I know that's where my curiosity was.
And that's fine. And that speaks back to what I was saying about being called like what my heritage or what my ethnicity or cultural background is, rather than like slapping that term of just like person of color on there or something like that. I don't, you know, it's, cultures are so beautiful to me like that. I love every single culture. I wish I could go around the world and just taste everybody's food. And like sit at their table and just see how their families work and what they, you know, the traditions that they have. I think they're so amazing. And yeah, anti-label. Maybe we should be anti-label. You know, it's because again, I feel like sometimes erasing that, and I know that sometimes that is a little tricky, because, you know, there's the all lives matter people that kind of tend to believe that too. You know what I mean? Like, why can't we just all be humans or whatever? Like,
It sounds a
you-
little bit like I don't see color or something like that.
right. And you don't want to cross over into that. I mean, it's still having respect for people's cultures and traditions and things like that. But like I said, I think I'm going to ask this group that I'm in, I'm going to see what they think about it. And then I also want to, I think we should definitely post something on the group page and see what other people think too, because I'd be really interested to see what other people feel about that. Because like I said, I just don't see a whole lot of Black people use that term. I have a ton of friends on Facebook and I hardly ever see them use the word BIPOC.
Yeah, when India was saying, like, what should we call people like that in op-eds or whatever, I was thinking of it in that context. Like, why would I be talking about Black and brown people in an op-ed? It would be for some kind of advocacy, right? I would be saying we need to pay more attention to this, or we need to stop
Yeah.
that. And so we still need to be able to talk about it in some way, because we're not in a place where we don't need to make changes. I feel like, you know, as long as this discrimination still exists, we need to be able to talk about it to stop the discrimination. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
India posted something about disability. India, are you okay with us reading what you're posting? I should have asked that earlier. Yes. Okay. So India in the chat said, I know from the time I was young, I welcomed any questions about my disability since the silence was worse. But at the same time, I totally get how being asked the same question over and over for years, decades, gets old, even if it's welcomed. Maybe we should be anti-label. So yeah. I know, so I have invisible disabilities, and I definitely, like, I like labels. I frankly, for myself, I love a lot of labels because labels help me understand myself better. And sometimes can be helpful for other people to understand me as far as, you know, disabilities go. But at the same time, you know, other people with the same disabilities I have are completely different and might, you know, experience the disabilities or express them differently than I do. So I don't like to be grouped in completely. So like, I'm an individual with this disability. So you have a basic idea of what I'm experiencing and what I am overcoming. But this is my specific story. And it's very hard to work with that.
I think for some people that it's important too, like the titles are important, you know, just like with the LGBTQIA plus, right, community, you know, there's pronouns, they and them, and that means a lot, you know what I mean, to be able to be called the proper, to be referred to as the proper person, or I don't even know what I guess you would call that. I don't want to sound ignorant,
Pronoun.
but right,
Totally.
right, to be called the proper pronoun.
Yeah.
But for me, as far as my race goes, I just feel like it invites questions a lot of times that are just super like inappropriate, you know, like without them even knowing it. Like I get that all the time with the what are you thing, like all the time, what are you? I had one lady ask me, and I saw her and I see her all the time. She works at the grocery store I frequent, and she said, gosh, hun, does everybody in your family look all exotic like you? And she didn't see anything by it, but I was like immediately just like, here we go, you know, like, what does that mean? What is that supposed to mean? You know, and I know what she was referring to. She was referring to my light skin. And that is always a source of comfort for people who are uncomfortable around dark skinned people. And I am quite aware of that. But again, that's part of the reason why I don't like the term person of color, because I just feel like it's not an appropriate label. I feel like it, you know, like I would rather somebody come up to me and specifically ask me or say, you know, you're such a unique, beautiful person. I just was curious what your ethnicity is. That would be lovely. I would be more than happy to tell you exactly what my cultural background is. But when somebody is just like, you know, lumps you into this group, I just don't, it doesn't sit right with me.
The question, what are you, is really horrible. I hope I have never said those words to anybody. But that would be okay to say, what is your ethnic background? Like, are you good with that? Because I'm curious, because I would like, I don't think I've ever asked anybody, but I appreciate what India said. I think the silence, and then like when you get to know somebody, not asking is equally damaging to asking. So my question is, what is the best way to ask? Like, expressing curiosity about somebody's cultural background, that's okay, right?
Of course. And I asked that question of other people. I just asked that question like 2 or 3 days ago. I asked somebody, what was their ethnicity? What was their cultural background? And they were more than happy to answer the question. I think it's a very polite way. And it's not just that it's polite, it's showing true interest in like, what makes this person look so amazing and unique and wonderful and beautiful. And I just want to learn more. You know what I mean? Oh, it was yesterday. I asked Vicky's son I actually said what, because he has an accent and clearly he's very proud of his heritage. Again, maybe it was more comfortable for me because I'm also Black, but or mixed, but it was like, I just simply asked him like, where are you originally from? What's your cultural background? That's exactly what I said. And he's like, oh, I'm Cameroonian. And I was like, oh, that's so wonderful. My daughter's dad is from Sierra Leone. So she's half West African. And he's like, yeah, we speak similar, and the conversation went from there. It was great. It was just what you needed it to be. But just to be like, if I would have walked up to that young man and just said, what are you?
Right.
No, that's horrible. Would your daughter, you said your daughters did not like questions directed at their ethnicity. How would they want to hear it? Or do they just not even want to go there?
I think that they'd rather be asked just that same way. What's their ethnicity? Because that's the thing. They don't get asked that question. Other kids will just assume, oh, I thought you were just white. And to them, that's confusing because they're like, how did you get that out of this curly hair and these freckles? Like, I get that I'm like extra, extra pale, as they would say, like I'm extra, extra fair, but how would you not even like attempt to, and so, but that's the thing. That is something that honestly, this is a whole different it's not a different subject. It's the same subject, but it's coming from a different place. That is a question that they often get asked or get assumptions made by other Black people.
Right.
Because they're not dark enough for them to say, oh yeah, duh, she's mixed. They're so fair that they're just like, oh, you don't even get a Black card. Like, we're just gonna immediately revoke it.
Yeah.
And so that angers them because, or sometimes they like it when I come to the school because I could see them like making eye contact with people like, yep, see my mom, because then it kind of shuts them down. They're like, oh yeah, I saw her mom one day, so she's mixed, but it's like they have to have proof or something. It's really frustrating for them.
I saw that Michael put in the chat something about the question could be, what is your heritage?
Yes, that's a good one too. There's nothing wrong with us wanting to know about each other whatsoever. In fact, I think it's a wonderful thing. To me, it shows so much more respect for other cultures. If somebody were to ask me that, I would at that moment, I would feel much more comfortable in their presence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm okay just being called white, even though at this moment in time, there's tons of baggage from every direction of that. That means, however, I have to own my heritage and a lot of things that came along from all this whiteness for generations. But then I feel that gives me a certain responsibility and opportunity to say I'm white and use that in alliance or in support of other people who aren't white. The other thing I'd say with that is I'm going to make mistakes and say inappropriate things or hurtful things by mistake along the way as I'm on this journey, and I would really want to be instructed. I would want to be informed, because that's the only way that I'm going to keep growing. So this is a chance for me also to say, well, if I take a risk and say something wrong, that someone in the group who's uncomfortable or sees it differently would let me know. I'm just inviting that, which I think everybody here probably invites, but I haven't had a chance to say it. Thank you.
Well, I feel like we've gotten more comfortable now with the, like not assuming pronouns and like, asking like, what are your pronouns and that sort of thing. So, I mean, could we normalize like, what's your heritage? Like, not assuming, or is that just making it too complicated?
Well, I think the question here was, whether or not using that term to generalize, to make that generalization is appropriate, or if people are even comfortable with it. And if so, then what else can we use when we're making a statement about the Black and brown population? Oftentimes it goes to underserved communities. That term gets used a lot, or like I said, BIPOC or minority. And so I feel like all of those are degrading who we really are. We're Americans, we're humans, we have different cultural backgrounds and ethnicities, but I think that it needs to definitely be explored. Bye, Michael.
Thank you guys for that in-depth and open-hearted discussion. I found it quite interesting, and I think I personally like Michael's suggestion, what is your heritage? So I may try that on for size for a while, because I know I have occasionally been tactless and, I literally asked people, what are you? So.
I think I saw that Denard's mute button was off for a second. Did you mean to do that? Did you have something you wanted to add? Denard, no? Okay.
Thank you to India for bringing up that article. That was an interesting conversation.
Yeah, is it the article, India put a link to the article in the chat, right? Okay, yeah, got it. Did anybody post this before?
I haven't seen
Like
it
in the
group.
group?
I have not seen it in
Okay.
the group. I haven't seen it for approval.
It says copy message. If like I'm trying to just like click on it to see if it would let me copy the link. Would it, if it says copy message, will it copy the link or just the message that was written?
If the message only has the link, it will copy the link.
Okay,
If it has more than the link, it will copy the whole thing.
okay.
So I have a question. When did BIPOC, now I'm sort of fascinated, when did that become a term? Because I became aware of it just like here in this group recently. And I'm sort of like, I feel like I learned a new term and now it's not a good one and I don't want to use it and offend anybody.
I learned about it maybe a year, maybe 2 years ago through Surge. That was the first, it was just used very just offhandedly. And I felt, wow, I need to catch up here. But you're right, now it's sort of like, oh, well, have to keep catching up.
Right. I mean, if it's offensive, I'm going to stop using it. So it really would be good to get some feedback on how people feel about it.
Yeah, I'll do some posting before I go to bed tonight. I'm going to post the link to the performance from yesterday and the shout out to One Pasadena, and I'll try to post this article with the request to, for, you know, for feedback, and hopefully we'll get some involvement and people will talk about that.
That's awesome.
Just the conversation is it's going to be really hard to ever reach a conclusion, but this conversation is so valuable. I thank you.
I agree. It is valuable.
Thanks.
It is, definitely. Thank you for everyone for your input.
India says
Alright,
2020 was when it seemed to become popular.
2020. And somebody asked, but I mean, I wonder who coined the term. Like, was it white people who coined the term, or was it people in the community? Something tells me white people coined that term now.
I just remember being told, don't use POC, use BIPOC instead, because it stresses the different experiences that Black and Indigenous people have in the United States. And I mean, I think that was pretty much the reasoning, you know, just stressing that difference.
I use POC. I use that a lot in writing. So I'm really, I wish I knew sooner that that's offensive or feels demeaning. I did not know that.
I don't think it's necessarily offensive or just flat out demeaning. Like I said, there are definitely words terms that are defensive and demeaning, but I think it's still just kind of one of those things where it just falls a little short, and it just kind of, you know, as a person who falls in that category, you just are kind of like, you know, a little perturbed or just a little annoyed with it, especially if it's like being directed at you. It's just kind of like, I'm not a POC. Like, you know, I'm a multicultural heritage, you know, woman with, you know, Latina and Black or Afro-Latina blood. So it, you know, I don't know. It's, again, I really would like to see if there is something else that can be used, but you know, I feel like in order to find that, you'd also have to normalize some things that some people are just going to have a problem with because they just are. Yeah.
Okay, any other topics of conversation for our community section?
India says the earliest tweet of BIPOC was 2013, and John, you say Google says it started showing up circa May 2020. I've been recording this whole time. I don't know if I was supposed to shut off at some point.
When you run out of disk space.
There you go.
We can always we can always shorten it before we post it if you want.
When we
True enough.
post it, I mean, I think it's at least going into the newsletter. Do you all want it cut at some point, or do you want to include this discussion?
I think it is a good discussion. If we do clip it, then we should have this discussion on the page, and especially once Rakaya gets some feedback.
I'd say India and Rakaya, I think you two shared the most personal stuff. So if you would prefer to cut it before the conversation, you know, like after all the official business or whatever, then please say so.
No, I'm fine with it. Even in my super rough state, I'm okay with you posting it, because I think the discussion is very important.
And India, you said, I think this is relevant to the group. Does that mean keep it? Yes. All right, cool. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. No further business. Listening to the rain outside and seeing the thunder flash, lightning flash through Randy's window back there.
Yeah, that was quite a boom. Did you guys have that?
Not
Yeah,
yet,
Well,
but
you and I
I-
are close enough that I can see my flash go off at the same time as yours through your
Yeah.
window.
Oh, there you go.
I get some booms up here. John's on the other side of the house and he doesn't have a window open, but outside of my window, I heard some loud thunder.
It's the first good one of the season, I think.
yeah, this is the bunker, if you will, so.
I'm gonna need to
Yes.
sign off now. Thank you all.
Bye, Jean.
Bye,
Good
Jean. If
seeing
you
you.
ever decide to join Facebook, I'm gonna put you in all the things.
Thank you, Jean. Have a good evening.
Oh, you're good.
Jean, if you need help with Facebook, I'll come over to your house and help you.
Actually, it's another discussion. Yeah, but thank you. Yeah, I have people who could help me with it. It's more, anyway, it's a gatekeeping in a way of sort of how much do you take in? But there are things I really want to say.
Understandable.
So, you all have helped me walk this fine line well, so we'll see how I go. Thanks so much. Have a good month. And I'll see some of you in a couple
You
weeks.
too. All right, take care. Thanks
Bye.
for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm gonna head out too, guys. I'm gonna make sure my kids are not destroying their room before they go to bed and start a new school week. And my mother-in-law's here too, so spend a little bit of time with her before I go to bed. But sorry I was late. It was family stuff, so